milk. From being weaned off the bottle as a baby, to pouring it in my Cheerios while I watch my favorite show Recess after school, to using it as a supplement to grow my muscles, I have always loved milk. Nothing compares. But fast forward to modern times, and we're finding out more and more things about milk. Some we probably didn't want to. So what is this milk controversy? Some people say we need it. Other people say it's the death of us. Then there's those that argue that we're stealing the milk from the baby cows. We'll save that one for later. So in this video, we're going to be going over a brief history of how humans started drinking milk, how it affects our bodies as well as the planet, a deep dive into the dairy industry, and finally, what we can do on a global scale to make a better impact. So for 200,000 years, humans have been alive. And for just a portion of that time, we've been drinking milk. Scientists actually believe that milk has been around as long as the dinosaur era. Nowadays, dogs, cats, seals, whales, as well as other mammals and humans all provide milk for their young. This is before being weaned off when capable. Now, this is to make up for the premature immune system that they're born with. But about 10,000 years ago, cow's milk was introduced. Farmers learned they too can milk cows, rather than just the baby calves. What this did was it brought along a great level of convenience. So when food was scarce, mothers were able to provide cow's milk for their children. Since milk went sour quickly, people got sick often. Then the great invention of pasteurized milk came along. But it wasn't just children that were drinking milk. Adults were drinking milk as well. And what this did was it caused a genetic mutation to occur. So while farmers were migrating to other countries, they brought along that genetic mutation with them. Now, what this basically means is that whoever got the genetic mutation has the enzyme that is able to break down the lactose in the milk. They are also known as lactase persisters. Now, the people who are lactase persisters, however, it's not fairly spread. They say people of Eastern African and Northern Europe descent are the only lactase persisters, and this is due to them being the originators of milk. The rest of us, however, only carry that enzyme during infancy, after which we lose it and aren't able to digest lactose as well. As a result, approximately 75% of people globally are lactose intolerant. But that still doesn't stop milk from being the norm. So whether it's in your lattes or whether it's in your milkshakes, it also seems like we can't escape milk. Now, our love of milk probably comes from really good marketing. In 2005, it was positioned as nature's natural performance enhancer. So whether you were an NFL player or a basketball player, rather than having energy drinks indefinitely steroids, milk was a better replacement. In 2006, aliens sent an expedition out to Earth to steal a cow and bring it back to outer space so they can reap the benefits as well. In 2010, there was the land of Mootopia, where after you had a glass of milk, you were in a land of all things positive and all things dreamy. Finally, in 2013, it was the bedtime drink. So if you had it right before bed, you went to fantastical places in your dreams. And of course, who could forget the Got Milk campaign? So all these commercials came together to form a little voice in our heads telling us we need milk. Now, milk does have its benefits as well. Proponents actually argue that it gives you energy, it keeps you full, and it helps you sleep if you have it right before bedtime. It also has 13 essential nutrients. It contains vitamin A, D, protein, selenium, and zinc. They also say that it helps with your gut health as well as your immune system. Now, the National Dairy Council has always argued that it helps build strong bones and it helps with weight loss. Other proponents also say that it helps lower your blood pressure if part of a healthy diet. However, it is kind of hard to isolate whether milk is the main beneficiary if you're already eating healthy foods to begin with. Now, with that said, we can't talk about this topic without talking about the Got Milk campaign. The Got Milk campaign was one of the biggest, most successful advertisement campaigns to ever exist, using star power to no end to influence the country as well as the rest of the world, using celebrities like Tyra Banks, Britney Spears, numerous NFL players, and the list goes on. Now, the claims of the Got Milk campaign was that it helps lower your blood pressure, it helps build strong bones as well as it being a better performance enhancer. Now, the FDA asked the USDA to look into these claims. Studies found that people who drank milk had as many, if not more, bone fractures than people who didn't drink milk. A commercial with Larry King Live actually stated that it helps lower your blood pressure. These claims later ended up being rejected by the FDA. One recent study did find that milk can help benefit Asian and white women in their bone-building years in the prevention of osteoporosis. So while the commercials were advertising benefits to everyone, a lot of us didn't get as many, if any at all. Additionally, these commercials weren't clear as to what specific milk is good for us. Is it skim? Is it whole? Whole milk has 5 grams of saturated fat, already eliminating it from anything healthy to begin with. Now, for reasons such as these, milk consumption is going down and milk alternative consumption keeps rising. Further, it's possible that too much dairy can harm our bodies as well as the planet. Now, when looking into the arguments of opponents, the results are mixed. Although there were studies that found links between dairy and cancer, it's hard to pinpoint whether dairy is the actual culprit. Meta-analysis found no links. Now, the greatest debate is that of IGF, which is a cancer-causing hormone. While many nutritionists believe dairy can trigger IGF, other nutritionists say that it's the same amount already found in our saliva and therefore very low. A legitimate risk, however, does lie in whole-fat milk and its high-fat content, causing things like high blood pressure and high cholesterol. Dr. Neil Bernard, who is an advocate for higher ethical standards in research, argues that even though dairy does contain 13 essential nutrients, sugar and fat have always been the most abundant. Recent studies, however, have shown a risk reduction with skim milk and cancer. Now, Dr. James Loomis, who is a plant-based doctor, argues that drinking skim milk doesn't help much either. He says that skim milk does have a lot of sugar in the form of lactose. And even though there's no strong links between dairy and diabetes, the amount of lactose in the milk itself is enough to contribute to type 2 diabetes. The strongest evidence of all is that of whole-fat milk and prostate cancer, increasing your risk up to 30 to 50% if drinking it on a regular basis. Now, Dr. Milton Mills, who is a Stanford graduate, points out that certain races have higher vulnerabilities. He states that African American men are twice as likely to get prostate cancer. He says once they have it, it's more aggressive, it's harder to treat, and it kills them quicker than white males. And to not let people know about this is extremely irresponsible. Now, he also goes on to talk about the link between ovarian cancer and dairy. He states that even though there's no strong links, there's still a causal link, and he thinks we should still avoid it. Now, ovarian cancer is one of the most lethal diseases. Once people have it, most people die from it. By the time people have found out about it, it's already spread all over their body. Therefore, why should we risk it? Now, Walter Willett is one of the most cited nutritionists internationally. He goes on to say that cow's milk is 5 times more harmful than plant-based milk. Now, a large population study, which is really important to Walter Willett, found that people in first world countries have the highest rate of osteoporosis and also intake the highest amount of dairy. People in third world countries drink the less amount of dairy and they have the lowest rates of osteoporosis. Now, a counter-argument is that osteoporosis in first world countries is due to something else. They say that these countries also tend to eat more meat and therefore that wipes out calcium. However, there are studies in the US that have shown that kids who drink more milk are actually taller than kids who don't. So clearly the milk and calcium is being absorbed somehow. So I'm going to go ahead and debunk this myth and put dairy back on the table as a possible link to osteoporosis. Now, Dr. Willett goes on to say that intaking dairy doesn't make the bones stronger per se, but it does make them longer. So it makes sense how it would fracture easier than a stronger, shorter bone. Additionally, it's the casein in the cow's milk that's one of the most harmful things because it's inflammatory. It aggravates irritable bowel syndrome. It can cause allergies, sinuses, ear infections, chronic constipation, acne, and gut issues. Additionally, adults who are done growing, they should excrete the same amount of dairy that they intake. However, realistically, this doesn't always happen. Additionally, other concerns are that of hormones, antibiotics, and pesticides. Now, many claim that because milk is tested numerous times throughout the year for these things, before actually being put on the shelves, that it's totally safe for consumption. However, a recent study from Emory University found otherwise. Now, this study took the milk off the shelves of multiple locations all over the United States and had it shipped overnight to their lab. These milks range from anywhere to conventional to organic, fat-free, skim milk, and of course whole milk. Now, the findings were disturbing. As expected, mostly conventional milk showed flaws. There were antibiotic residues in 60% of the conventional milks, which is fine except samples included banned antibiotics. These included sulfamethazine and sulfadiazole, both banned in milk production. Now, the growth hormones in conventional milk were 20 times higher than that in organic milk. Controversial pesticides were also found. These included Chlorpyrifos and low levels of pesticides were found in organic samples as well. Mind you, hormones and pesticides are banned from anything organic, so there's definitely been some deceit in milk labeling. Now, large dairy farms depend on antibiotics to keep their cows healthy. However, if absorbed by humans, we can become resistant to those antibiotics as well, and additionally, it can cause growth in people, which so far hasn't shown to be a good thing. Now, cows already provide us with their natural hormones, but these added hormones can cause other complications in humans. So with that being said, it's obviously better to buy organic milk if you're going to. Now, what researchers took from this is that milk production obviously needs to be strengthened. While human safety, I'm sure, is a priority and is something that is important to the milk industry, in the end, just as like with many other industries, it seems like money and profits outweighs everything. So what's it like for kids and babies? Now, kids and babies are obviously growing, so naturally they need more nutrients and minerals. Now, studies have shown that kids who intake dairy are taller than kids who don't. Now, it doesn't make their bones stronger, as mentioned earlier, but it does make them longer. Now, a study was conducted of 240 kids ages 8 through 15 who weren't getting enough calcium. So what the study did was it added 3 servings of dairy to their diet for 18 months. After the study, however, it found no difference in bone density whatsoever. Now, it could be that bone density maybe happens over a longer period of 18 months, or again, as studies have shown over and over, maybe it just makes the bones longer instead of stronger. Now, before the age of 1 year old, it is not recommended to give babies any dairy whatsoever. So their enzymes actually aren't prepared to handle any non-human food. Obviously, milk comes from cows. So if a baby were to intake dairy before the age of 1, their enzymes will go into attack mode, putting them at risk for type 1 diabetes. Now, Dr. Milton Mills goes on to say that no other food has to be worked around in this way. Now, the United Kingdom recommends 350 milligrams of calcium per day for ages 1 through 3. The US and Canada recommend 700 milligrams per day. There are over 3 million people with osteoporosis in the United Kingdom, and in the United States, there is 44 million people with osteoporosis. Now, Dr. Jean Welsh, who is another expert, doesn't recommend taking dairy off the table just yet. She states that a lot of kids are already picky eaters. They don't eat a lot of kale, broccoli, spinach, or leafy greens. Therefore, if they're picky, keep the dairy on the table. However, it also goes to show that you can't just sneak a little leafy greens in their smoothies without them noticing. After age 2, it's recommended that kids be switched to skim milk. Now, let's get into how it harms the planet. Dairy farms make up about 2% of greenhouse gas emissions. This doesn't seem like much, but let's look at this a little bit more closely. Between 2005 to 2015, on a global scale, the dairy sector increased its gas emissions by 18%. This is while the US decreased their greenhouse emissions by 5%. So what does this mean? So even though greenhouse gas emissions are low, this number may keep increasing if other countries don't start doing their part. Now, a liter of cow's milk emits about 3.2 kilograms of greenhouse gas emissions. This is about 7 pounds, but this is nothing compared to the water. It takes 144 gallons of water to create 1 gallon of milk, many times polluting the water. Then there's the issue of deforestation, where trees are cut down for cow grazing. It takes 4 square kilometers to produce 1 glass of cow's milk. And 9% of the US cropland is used to feed cows. Now, a dairy cow eats about 100 pounds of food every single day. This is how they fatten them. Now, the argument is that we can take all the food given to the cows, the wheat, the barley, the soy, give them to people who are hungry, and then just let the cows eat the grass. Now, when the urine and the manure of a cow is properly managed, it can fertilize crops and produce energy. But when it's not, it emits greenhouse gases, pollutes water, and destroys natural habitats. Now, because the amount of manure that's being pumped is at a higher rate than the soil can absorb, many times it overflows into creeks and rivers. The cows themselves also emit greenhouse gases. Every time they burp or fart, they release methane into the air. Finally, there's the very compassionate argument that it was never meant for humans. Now, milk is absolutely a super drink, and all the extra proteins are used for a baby calf to grow rapidly, but human adults don't need to grow. They also say that it's simply unnatural. However, seagulls and cats have been seen stealing milk from other species. In my opinion, the only question that really matters is, are the baby calves themselves getting enough milk? Let's take a look at the dairy industry. Now, the life of a dairy cow is devastation at its finest. The best way to get a cow to produce the most amount of milk is by impregnation. Now, this is done artificially by bull semen. This is done over and over and over again throughout the entirety of her lifespan. Now, minutes after giving birth to her baby calf, the calf is then separated from the mother, unallowed to drink the mother's milk because, of course, this is used for profits. The mother can then be heard for days, weeks, even months crying out for her loved one, by that time which she is already pregnant with another one. Now, the living conditions aren't any better. They're kept in tight, hard spaces that are hard on their hooves and aren't free to roam. Now, videos have also surfaced of extreme animal abuse by workers. The cows can be seen beaten, kicked around, and on a worst case scenario, even being tortured while giving birth to her baby calf. Now, on average, a cow is meant to live up to 20 years, but because of all the abuse and all the torture, their lifespan is shortened to 4 to 5 years, after which their body is no good according to industry standards, and they are sent to a veal farm to be slaughtered. Now, what happens to the babies, you ask? The females are kept to repeat the same cycle as their mother. The males, on the other hand, live to be teenagers if lucky, or after they're fattened, they're also slaughtered for meat. Now, the baby calves can too also be heard crying out for their mothers, so instead of being given their mother's love and their milk, they're being dragged into confinement and given milk substitute, grass, wheat, or other alternatives. Now, one thing to keep in mind is this isn't all dairy farms, it's the mega farms. So while small operation dairy farms have closed every single day for the past 20 years, dairy industries and farms with 1,000 cows or more have been forced to grow. Now, while we had 125,000 dairy farms making 167 billion pounds of milk, we now have 54,000 dairy farms producing 218 billion pounds of milk. Now, with operations this big, the quality is bound to fail. Now, as stated before, videos of extreme animal and cow abuse by workers have emerged by organizations like the Animal Recovery Mission. Additionally, reports of unhappy workers working long hours in unsanitary conditions have only added to the abuse. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a quick video of Fair Oaks Dairy Farm. This video is going to be provided to us by Richard Kudo. He's the founder of Arms Investigation. He teams up with law enforcement to go undercover as a dairy worker, where he videotapes and captures all the evidence and then exposes the industry. Just a heads up, this video is graphic.
In our 10 years of being undercover, we have never seen such consistent, constant abuse. This isn't one or two bad apples. The calves being ripped from their mother, entering the hutches, and being left in extreme temperatures, dying from those extreme temperatures. The dairy industry has stated that they have done away with all veal crates, that calves are now raised in groups. They're doing nothing but deceiving the public.
As hard as it is to watch that video, one thing to keep in mind is that's just one of numerous dairy farms that Richard Kudo has already exposed. Now, Animal Recovery Mission is someone I encourage you to follow and help any way you can. From getting executives fired, to getting workers thrown in jail, to simply getting the stories out there on the news, they have had a list of numerous accomplishments. Richard Kudo, the founder, has made it his life's mission to expose animal fraud in different industries all around the world. I'll go ahead and leave his information down below so you can follow, like, or just help them in any way you can. In the end, although it's a superfood, it might not be a superfood for us. Regardless of the vitamins and the minerals, we have to remember that fat and sugar are the most abundant. Now, even if you're not lactose intolerant, false labeling is common practice, and intaking those added hormones wouldn't be surprising. Now, dairy is recommended for young kids, but even they can't digest it properly. Now, organic whole milk without the added hormones is safe for infants in their growth. However, we're never really sure about the hormones. Additionally, you can get your daily intake of calcium, potassium, and protein through nuts, fruits, vegetables, and dark leafy greens. It doesn't have to be dairy. If we steered clear of dairy, saving it for mothers who can't produce breast milk, people who are in dire need of nutrients, or just to feed the hungry, we would greatly minimize this problem. In the end, if you want to go vegan, do this. Stick to milk substitute, vegan cheese, vegan yogurt. If you don't want to go vegan, do this. Stick to skim milk or goat's milk. Now, goat's milk is considered an A1 milk and is anti-inflammatory. I would still stick to 1 to 2 servings a day and buy from ethical brands only. In the end, the choice is yours.